Hi, I'm Sam. About 5 years ago, my whole world was turned upside down. More on that later, but let's just say, in what was supposed to be the happiest time in my life, I felt totally lost. You're listening to or watching my show, where we'll be talking with friends in healthcare, wellness, and holistic healing about real self care. I'm not talking about pedicures and bubble baths, we're talking true acts of care to maintain our physical and mental health so we can truly live fearlessly and fulfilled. Say it with me, self-care is my job. Hi, we are back. Here we are. This is another episode, but a special episode of Self-Care is My Job. I'm Samantha Long, the host of the show. And I'm saying this is a special episode because this is the very first of a kind of separate and special series that I'm going to be adding in starting January 2021, which is going to be Mom Bomb Mondays. I want a mother's perspective on everything we're talking about because A, I'm a mom, B, I work with mothers and women on their self-care and prioritizing themselves. So we need to have that take. And let's just face it, things change when you have children. Like, the approach to prioritizing yourself is just a little different.
Mhm.
So I have somebody here with me that I've been friends with for a while, and I'm so thankful she's joining me tonight. This is Lisa Castellano. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
And so yeah, me and Lisa go back years at this point,
Yeah.
over 5 to be exact. October was 5 because we used to work together. But so now we're reconnecting over a very new topic. I find it actually it's worth noting that we initially connected over wine,
Yeah.
and now we're not that we weren't keeping in touch, but we're reconnecting over
Right.
meditation. So the
It goes.
irony in that is the funnies of that is not lost on me, but that's also like hashtag my life. Like, I mean, literally that's what's going on. So yeah, Lisa, I'm just going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, just basic stuff for now.
So my name is Lisa and I am 47. I'm married with 2 kids. My son Matthew is graduating from Bergen Tech Paramus this year. He's class of 2021.
Yes.
And my daughter is graduating middle school in Hasbrook Heights. She's also class of 2021. And I work full time for a fundraising strategic consulting firm. I am the HR administrator for payroll and HR. And I literally, I literally I work, I come home, I work more at home, and then
Mhm.
I just do it again the next day, like everybody else.
Right.
And it's although it's gotten a little bit easier because my kids are older, in terms of they can kind of manage themselves, the worry about them is just different. So it's the same amount of worry, it's just different worry.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much who I am, or that's my introduction.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was just gonna I'm glad you went into that because I was just gonna say, and yeah, you mentioned work. How has that evolved, in this time since March during this whole pandemic and social distancing?
yeah, so it's crazy. So I work out of the home, pardon me, and we did shut down because we had to in March.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the consulting firm is we have a headquarters and we had just signed a lease. So we have a 10-year lease in Lyndhurst, of an expanded office space that now only holds 3 people. We had to do a reduction in force. We all had to work from home. So it was rough, and we had to learn how to do our jobs at home, which was really difficult because we're so connected to paper and everything was in the office.
Oh my
So
God.
then,
Wow.
yeah, and then also with this 2 years ago, we bought a house with my parents. So we're living with my parents, and we went from a house that had not many people home to every single person ever in my life being in the house at the exact same time.
Lovely.
Morning, noon,
Sounds
and
good.
night.
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
That's like that. I forget what show it was when they talk about, I think it was Seinfeld, when you're deciding when George was going to get married and Jerry comes out and he's like, well, when you wake up, she's there. When you get out of the shower, she's there.
Yeah,
When you go to bed, she's
she's
there.
there.
Like that's exactly what it was.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it was navigating at home learning, which is different for me versus different for you. I'm sure Aria was at school, was doing virtual. And
Virtual kindergarten.
how does a kindergartner do virtual? It's impossible. But at the same time, you have my son he has not been in school since March, and he is class of 2021 that hasn't set foot in the school. So
Mhm.
that is a completely different set of worry and issues and stuff like that,
Yeah.
because he's not going to college. So this is a big year for him in the technical school. He's missing out on all of that stuff. So
Wow.
trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And that,
Not stressful.
no, no, not at all. It's so chill. So
Yeah.
chill. I
Mhm.
mean, it's crazy because we were talking about, you know, nearly a year of all of these different levels too of
Mhm.
transition in this, because I think that in the beginning you're kind of like, okay, there's the shit hits the fan, right? Like there's that immediate like physical reaction where you're just like, I can't even believe this is happening. By the time we flash forward to now, ideally there are certain aspects of this social distancing and virtual world that we're in now that we have adjusted to,
Mhm.
but the problem is everything else that's going on in the friggin' world, and
Mhm.
and the fact that there's this like there's always news, like there's always something new to kind of wrap your head
Oh,
around. So now
right.
we're trying to all wrap our head around the vaccine and whether or not we're prepared to take it and what our thoughts are on that, and then all of the information just coming at our
Yeah.
face about all of these things constantly. So I'm mentioning it obviously to paint a picture of the stress level
Mhm.
that not only everybody is experiencing, but moms specifically have that. And you mentioned it perfectly. Like I do have a separate, a very different, day to day, because I have a daughter who's 5 who's doing virtual kindergarten. And thankfully, my 2-year old is in nursery school 4 days a week, for a half day, but because he's like so young, and we didn't intend to put him in anything. But when my 5-year-old was, when it was definite she was going to be
Mhm.
mostly home, it was like, how, you have to figure out, how can I make this, as much as this was not the original plan, how
Mhm.
can I make this easier on my family? Like, how can we manage this? And that was part of it. And thank God, because otherwise my 2-year-old would never see another person.
Right. Mhm.
Like, would literally never see another person if he wasn't going to school every day. So anyway, yes, our situations are different because our kids are in very different situations, but the stressors, like you say, are different also, in that, you're probably worried about how they're absorbing and
Mhm.
um adjusting and reacting to all of this. I mean, my kids, like I said, they're relatively young. Aria has definitely had a skyrocketed level of anxiety, which is
Mhm.
kind of shocking, because but I mean, she's just super smart, and you're just
Mhm.
like, and the girls, I think, like internalize more and like get more, and I know that you
Mhm.
get that. So,
Mhm.
but at the same time, like, your kids can read.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like,
they
on
have
their
current
own.
affairs. It might not be uh it's not show and tell, but it's current affairs now. So
Yeah.
like so they're sitting there and they're having a class in Nina's Matthew school or in history, and literally came out and said to him after what happened the other day, like, well, how are you feeling? And it's so funny because he didn't quite, he knew what happened, but he didn't quite grasp the
Yeah.
the massiveness of it.
Yeah.
And he came out, he's like, I had no idea. I couldn't understand why the teacher kept asking us how we were feeling, because now the teachers have to navigate it too.
Yeah.
You don't have your student in front of you. It's so completely different. So they're not
Craziness.
that I'm not equipped to handle my child, I am, but they're equipped to like they're used to, because of their profession, what they've chosen and their path, they have all of that to build on to help children absorb and process all this stuff. I have
Right.
me. I
Exactly. Well, that's the thing,
don't
is
have that
that you
experience.
have, and it's actually a great segue, because it's a perfect way to kind of give an example of, like as mothers, we feel like we have to help manage every aspect
Mhm.
of our child's life. And what ends up happening is we feel like we fail if we can't, and maybe I just speak for myself. I don't think I just speak for myself. What, like you can really get down on yourself when you can't protect your child from some kind of big reaction to something, or
Mhm.
from being affected
Or
negatively.
that you shouldn't protect them from it.
Right. But
Like,
that's the problem, is that, I mean, not the problem, but what, and one of the most important things, and believe it or not, I actually learned this in yoga teacher training. Like I feel like I fully absorbed it while I was going through that training, only probably because I was getting very in tune
mhm,
with, the reality of things. But it was like a light bulb went off when I realized that they really are like their own person.
mhm,
Like we attach ourselves so to our children, where we feel like it's our job to, like, not only protect them, but to like dictate like who they're going to be, and like,
mhm.
not just not mess them up, but
Right.
like almost like we're chipping away at a sculpture, like we're trying to
Mhm.
create somebody
You
here.
can't, you have to try not to project onto them.
Exactly. So it's like,
That's
but we
really
then
hard.
then this stuff comes in. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that was my point, is like, it's a wake up call when we deal with certain things like this, like these huge events,
Mhm.
because these events are unprecedented for us in our own life.
Mhm.
So like you're talking about, oh, a teacher has some kind of training to deal with these situations and to help them absorb and to help them move through these emotions, and that's so true. Like this is totally new grounds for
Right.
everyone, even within our own lives. Forget trying to help our kids
Mhm.
navigate it. So obviously stress levels are high,
Mhm.
and we are just all doing the best that we can. And so recently, me and Lisa have started talking about the concept of meditation.
Mhm.
And I've been really enjoying our conversations. And not only did I want to bring her on just to have like a general mom perspective, given the current state of things, as we've
Mhm.
been talking about, but, obviously one of the best and most effective ways to incorporate some self care into your life for mental health is meditation, and it's everywhere right now. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, even for me, when I say, even my term of self-care is a buzzword now in itself, where that's
Mhm.
everywhere. I had a virtual moms circle last night, where legitimately there were moms who were like, and what is self-care exactly? And it
Mhm.
was like half joking, but like half real, because you're like,
Yeah.
well, what exactly do I need to do here? And what
Mhm.
happens is we get so disconnected from ourselves, from all of these whirling thoughts and all of these anxieties and fears that take over. We get so disconnected from our bodies that we don't even know what we need anymore. So,
Mhm.
point is, I want to just congratulate you up front, because and I'm going to let you kind of like, tell your own, sort of journey, talk about your own little journey here into meditation. But I'm giving you a huge pat on the back for like acknowledging that you needed to incorporate yet another form of self care into your life in a more meaningful way,
Mhm.
and being okay with trying something new, because people, I think that there are just a lot of moms specifically who are ready, especially like it's a perfect micro practice. We don't have a ton of time. It's a perfect micro practice, 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't need to be an hour yoga class or whatever. So seriously, like, go you for like
Mm.
being in tune with and prioritizing it as something that you want more of in your life. So tell us, like, how, like, what was it that spoke to you and said, I might very well need to start having a meditation practice.
So, I mean, it's a little bit of everything. It's a lot of social media.
Hmm.
So I know that it happened before the 1st of January. So it's not necessarily, for me, it didn't necessarily go along with the New Year's resolution thing. So this kind of was before it. And I would be sitting there and I'm on my phone and I'm trying to be, let me decompress on my phone because, that's decompressing. It's really not. And I was in TikTok. I went down a TikTok
The
wormhole
TikTok
and
tunnel.
just
Oh
and
my
just kept going down and down. And then all of a sudden, I started falling upon winter solstice things.
God.
And
Hmm.
it kept talking about winter solstice, talking and how what a huge shift it was going to be, and that you were going to feel this energy. And then, so I was seeing that. Then I was talking to a girlfriend at work and didn't know, one of my closest friends didn't know that she practices meditation, had no idea, and said, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm like, but I always feel so cheesy doing it. And I don't know, I can't really focus. And I start going all over the place. She's like, just keep doing it. I do it all the time. And I'm like, where the heck have you been? Why didn't you tell me you were doing this? So she was doing
Yeah.
it.
It's a lot of us are low key, like, you don't know.
Yeah. You have no idea. So
Because
then
you'll hear
I,
my foul mouth ass, like, and you're like, you're
that
a
always
person.
cracks me up because when you start talking about it, you specifically, and then I'm like, how's she gonna do this? I'm like, how's she gonna do all this self-care without dropping any bombs? And then
I
you
drop them
start
all
doing it. I'm
the
like,
time.
oh, okay, good.
You
I could
should have heard
totally
me
do
on my
this.
mom's call last night. I have zero filter, and you know that.
So yes, I do. And that's part of it too. It's like, okay, well, I can actually be myself and do this.
Yes,
I don't have to change into somebody else that I'm not.
that is
So
such a good point.
and people, I think, don't realize that, like, you don't have to you have to kind of figure out what it is for you, because what it is for me is going to be different than what it is for you.
Hmm.
And um so and it's something that I'm learning. So what I found was, I kept stumbling upon, obviously, your page because I'm friends with you, and then I started, like, reading and watching this stuff. And
Hmm.
then the one woman that you were collaborating with, Heather.
Heather, yeah,
Yeah, so she
Heather
did a
Neves,
human
yeah.
chart design, and I was asking you about that because you had done that. And when I read it, it was so funny because you know me so well. You're like, it might bring up stuff that you're not gonna like.
I'm like, be
I'm like,
prepared.
so I was like, okay, so I prepared myself. And then I read this human design that she gave me.
Mm,
And I had to keep going back and reading it over and over again. It was so
I did too.
100% spot on me that it was like she knew. I've never met Heather before. I've never talked to her, nothing. It was like she knew who I was. So I was like, okay. And then she just kept saying, you can meditate. And you said that to me too. You can meditate on the affirmations that are there.
Hmm.
Now, going back to where we first met in wine, and a lot of what successful guides were doing at the time in wine, and I'm sure they're still doing it now, is they would say affirmations. They would think positively. They would write their goals down. They would all do that. And I'd be like, that's not, I'm not going to do that.
Yes, I
I'm like,
know.
I'm totally not going to do that. I am, and honestly, it's like, I felt stupid.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I'm an idiot writing all this stuff down.
Hmm.
So this is a huge step for me because it goes against, not it goes against, but I was so resistant to it.
Yeah.
So when I decided, okay, I'm not going to be resistant to it, and I did it right on the winter solstice,
Mm.
meditated for the very first time that night. I got up in the morning and I just did something quick on my phone, um, on YouTube. I meditated that morning, and I did my positive affirmations that I never believe in, but I actually said to myself, you're not allowed to say you don't believe in it. So you have to just say it. What is the absolute worst that's going to happen? nothing is going to change.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
worst.
No negative outcome whatsoever.
So what do I have to lose? So I sat there and I wrote down the night before everything that I thought, everything that I want my life to be in 20, in not even 2021, in my future. This is how I perceive my life. I'm going to have this, and just wrote a list, a
Mm.
wish list of what my life is going to be, what I want my life to be. And I wrote it down on a sticky note. I shoved it in my drawer. I meditated it. I meditated on. I thought about it as much as I possibly could have
Which
focused
is
my first one.
like almost the same concept, really. Yeah.
Right. Wrote it down, and then on the way to work, we had gotten a phone call. My husband takes me to work. We had gotten a phone call in the morning um, that would actually be part of the path to get to one of the things that I wrote down
Mm.
for how my life was going to be.
Mhm.
And two other things happened, and I'm so, you know what it is, I'm so exhausted. And I said it to you the other night, I can't remember what the other two things were, but it was all part
Oh,
of
that happens to me all the time. I'll be
wrote
like,
down.
"Oh,
So
like a string of events," and then
yeah,
I'll try to, reiterate it to somebody, and I'm like, there was two
there
more
was
things."
more than one.
I swear, I can only remember
Yeah.
one right now, but there was a whole bunch of things that happened.
Right. So it was just bizarre. So I think I jumped on your page and I just wrote down, I'm like, holy cow, this actually happened. And you chimed in, and Heather chimed in, and some other folks that are on your page chimed in to just keep doing it, keep doing it. So I'm like, well, now I have to keep a schedule. Like, I started to overwhelm myself instantly
Ah,
with,
and then we started to bring our perfectionism into
yeah,
the picture.
right,
I
exactly.
just want to pop in and comment on at least one thing that you said.
Mhm,
So what you said was, I decided not to be resistant to it anymore.
mhm, mhm,
And so to me, that brings up two things. It brings up, it was just your time. You know
mhm,
what I mean? Because, like, for example, I was just talking about this with another mom last night, where it was like, I just woke up one day and there's like that quote, that little thing that you've probably seen. I just woke up that one day and I decided I didn't want to feel that way anymore, kind
mhm.
of thing.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what I was talking about last night. I woke up one day and I decided that, guilt was not a productive feeling for me anymore. Now, I know that sometimes it's, like, annoying to hear that, like, "Oh, I just woke up one day." It's
mhm,
like, but that's the thing, like, there is a point in your life where you're ready for something to actually change, and it's really
mhm.
not gonna click until you get to that point, until
Right.
you're kind
Your
of
rock
mentally and
bottom.
physically prepared, or out of desperation. Yeah,
Right,
sure,
yeah.
why not? I say that all the time, that, like, I my beginning of my whole story and my whole journey into self-care as a whole was almost initially out of desperation, because I
Mhm,
was immensely depressed. I was in the midst of a fucking identity crisis and I didn't know
mhm,
who I was anymore. And so I threw myself back into yoga, and I started singing again, because I
mhm,
was like, I don't even, like, I just need to do something for myself. It was out of total desperation. So, yeah, there are those rock bottom, or like like life transition major shift moments where you're like, holy shit, like, I'm
mhm,
going to need to do something right now. And so you could say that those are the moments that either, so when things actually go into effect, you could say that you're ready, or that like, if it's a major shift that causes
right,
you to move into it, you could say that the universe is intervening and placing you right where you need to be to
mhm,
incorporate something into your
right,
life, if you want to get woo woo about it.
mhm,
But I really just wanted to point that out, because there could be moms listening to this going, I just ain't ready for that. And
right,
that's okay.
right,
Like, so, and at the risk of sounding like an asshole, why don't you meditate on it?
yeah, right.
Like, and so you hear that too all the time.
Mhm,
And, I do think that people just generally mean, like, kind of ruminate on,
just think,
sleep
right,
on it,
think
ruminate
about
on
it.
it, see it,
Mhm,
see if it comes back, see if this conversation plants a seed in your head and
mhm,
that starts to sprout later on down the line. Um, But I think it would be helpful for us to talk too, for anybody who's listening, and like you had said it too, about like how moms need to know this, like women need to people need to know this, that it doesn't need to be a perfectly executed
Oh,
thing,
yeah,
a perfectly executed practice, which you were just about to discuss how you were trying to make a schedule and everything.
right. It's, and I had a real hard time with that because I kept asking, well, how do you do it? Like, when are you supposed to do it? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to feel? Am I supposed to have the light on? Is the light supposed to be off? Somebody told me about a candle. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So what I found was I'm going to do it the easiest way possible for me. So I
Yeah.
look for 5-minute ones because I don't know if that's how I like, at least for the first couple ones, I did 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I know me well enough that if I try to close, if you tell me to close my eyes, two things, and just relax, two things are going to happen. I'm either going to fall asleep
Mm.
because I'm exhausted, or I'm going to sit there and be like, is the laundry in the dry? Did I put the laundry in the dryer? Is it still in the washer? Is I hear something. What are they doing in there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the water running? Like, these are the things that will happen. So I know me well enough to know that I need a guided meditation. I need somebody to tell me what to do in the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally just, they're not telling you to think, they're not telling you what to think. They're just basically, not my voice. They're like a really nice and calming voice. And then you just get so relaxed, and they focus on the breathing. I know you're into yoga. You do a lot of yoga. That's your thing. I think I've done 2 yoga classes my whole life. And to have to figure out how to breathe and do movements is a lot for me.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing like that's a practice. Like, I really have to practice on breathing when they tell me to breathe, because I don't get that big inhale that they're telling me about.
Yeah.
And I have to be like, okay,
That doesn't come right away. It
right. So
doesn't.
I'm like, I'm like, why don't I get
I
enough
kid you not.
oxygen?
I used to have that same anxiety of like, it literally hurts if I
Yeah.
try to inhale that deeply. Like, not
Right.
anymore, admittedly not anymore, only
Mm.
because I do it all, only
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
been years of practicing it. But I used to think that all the time, like like that's all I
Mhm.
got.
Yeah. And I'm like, they're like, keep breathing out. I'm like,
It's gone.
can't do
It's
it
gone.
anymore.
The air is gone.
There's nothing left. So I did, so that was good. And then something, so I know that I could do that. I know that if I do the guided, it's great. So then I said, and I forget who mentioned it on your page. I'm like, okay, because I was talking about a schedule, that I need a schedule. And
I
I
think
tried, so I said to myself, I'm going to do this every work morning when I go into the office, before I go into the office. And for the most part, it works. There are some days, like the other day, where I was like, holy cow, it's 7:30 and I'm not out of bed yet, and I'm running around the house. So that didn't work. So I did it at night. But I find the days that I don't do it, I definitely have a little bit more of an anxious day in the office.
mhm.
So I didn't get to it on Monday, and Monday was a really bad, maybe it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday. It was a really bad day at work. Like, I was just up to here all day. I can feel it in here.
Mm.
And I just kept like, everything I kept saying, I can't do it. I can't do that. No, I have to put it off. Like, I just had so many things going. And it hit me that it was because I thought that it contributed. I would have been a stressful day anyway, but I think I was more stressed out because I didn't go in so openly,
Mhm.
that I did want, but then I meditated at night and I slept super sound. Normally, if I've had that stressful of a day, I don't have a
You
good
don't
night's
sleep
sleep.
well. Yeah.
I don't, because I'm replaying it in my head.
Oh, yeah. I
But what I
definitely.
also noticed too, and I did it over the weekend, my kids bought me for Christmas. We have a it's called Healing for the Soul. It's in my town in Hasbrook Heights. And she has yoga in there, and there's a spiritual guide in there, and they have crystals, and it's all vegan, and it's actually really very good.
Oh,
I'm
I
not
wanna
vegan.
go.
Oh my God, their bakery is called, the baker is called Soul Sweets. It's amazing. You have no
Wow.
idea that you're eating a cupcake that does not have butter in it. Like
Butter. Yeah.
it's amazing. So my son has always been drawn to crystals, always. Always, always, always. Like he collects crystals. It's the first place
That's
we go.
cool.
So I knew he'd want to go in there, but they went in there for Christmas for me, and they bought me a homemade soap, and my daughter got me a meditation candle with crystals in it, and then they got me an opalite crystal for me because my birthstone is opal. And I decided she kept asking me if I was going to meditate to the candle. I'm like, well, how do you meditate to a candle? How am I going to do this? So I was like, you know what? This is self-care. This I'm doing for me, because if I don't feel better about myself, I can't feel better anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I had showered, I had worked out in the morning, I showered, I came back, I put my hair up, I put a mask on my face, I lit the candle, and I put it on the floor, and I just sat there and I just had music on in the background and just kind of stared at it. And that was my thing. Like I was like, okay, I'm focusing on this candle. I'm not drifting anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So that works for me too. So, I mean, I don't know if I can't really do that every morning because it's not enough time,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I found,
that seems like more of a sort of like relaxing nighttime routine too. And
yeah.
again, it
Hmm.
doesn't that's the other thing too, right, about the schedule. Like it doesn't have to happen every single night.
Hmm.
If you put pressure on the practice, you might create some anxiety and you might ultimately throw yourself into beating yourself up for not sticking to that schedule.
Right.
I mean, that's a much larger conversation, right? About
Hmm.
sort of, setting um realistic standards for yourself and, not, beating yourself up too much. But this is exactly part of the practice, is to figure out how it works for you. And for me, like, okay, so there's so many different levels. It depends on what type of meditation you're doing. So me being a yogi, my meditation has always come from the breath. Like I think that I probably learned more about breath work before I got to a point where I could really say that I was meditating. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And now, years later, I've experienced a lot of different kinds of meditation. I sit right here in this space, and it doesn't happen every day. It
Hmm.
happens, and this is something that I talk about with anybody who wants to hear me talk about self-care micro practices, but like it happens in pockets of time
Hmm.
that I spot throughout my day as opportunities to incorporate self-care into my life. It doesn't
Hmm.
happen on a schedule.
Hmm.
Um, and there are parents specifically who have a completely different approach to that. Well, they'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning so
Yeah.
that they can have an hour before their kids wake up or longer or whatever it is. I mean, I would genuinely need to wake up at 5 if I was going to try to wake up before my kids, and people do that all the time to work out and so
Mhm.
on and so forth.
God bless them.
And exactly, God bless them. I can't do it. I hope, and I actually do think that there might be I can almost visualize that there might be a point in my future that I can find a way to incorporate that if I needed to,
Hmm.
because I get less and less. I become more and more as I age. I find I'm better in the morning, to be honest.
Hmm.
Like I used to be like a night owl, like 100%,
Hmm.
and now it's like, I mean, that doesn't make any sense anymore. I'm sleepy. Like by,
Hmm.
10 o'clock, I'm like ready to get in a shower and then get in bed. So
Yeah.
anyway, my point is that the schedule doesn't work for me. I realized that from a much larger perspective, shortly, I don't want to say shortly after I became a mom, but a couple years in maybe, that the scheduling was giving me such anxiety as a mom because especially with really small kids, like you're so tethered to what is going on with them that very quickly that schedule and whatever you wrote in your planner or whatever your list was for the day, that shit is going out the window pretty fast. And
Yeah.
then all you're left with is a laundry list of shit that you didn't get to that's going to make you feel like shit when you look at it.
Yep.
Maybe not, but maybe. And
Right.
so I had to really eat when it comes to to-dos, like actual responsibilities, and how am I going to incorporate, stuff for myself.
Mhm.
I had to take a much more flowy approach to it. So I find pockets of time to come down here. I'll set a timer on my phone for 5 minutes. Sometimes even now it feels like forever, and sometimes when the timer goes off, I'm like, "Oh no, hell no, I'm staying right where the fuck I am. I'm not moving.
Mhm.
I'm still in this. I'm good." My mind will absolutely drift still.
Mhm.
And uh what I do, because my meditation like came from me learning about breath work, is that it's always breath led. So I will start with some belly breathing, which is really just like allowing your midsection to like rise and fall with that breath, and then like you almost being aware of that is your focus, even
Mhm.
like, so now you're in the breath, because you're not just breathing like your
Right.
normal
Yeah.
breath. You're actively focused on breathing in a certain kind of way, so you
Right.
are focusing on something, you are
Mhm.
using your brain and your body. So,
Mhm.
and that's because it's another thing that I like to mention is like you're not turning your brain off. Like that's
Right.
another common misconception.
Mhm.
There's a lot of misconceptions around meditation, and that's one of them. Um, and yeah, so my brain will my thoughts my brain doesn't turn off. My thoughts will enter,
Yeah.
and I will either come back to the breath from like a physical sense, like of just letting it come in and out of me, or I'll even like kind of recite to myself, inhale or exhale or breathe in or breathe out. So, and then let that be the words that are going
Right.
on up here. And it doesn't matter, like the thoughts are still gonna come up again and again. And it ends up, the last thing I'll say about it is that the practice is literally like being okay with that. Like part of the practice is being okay with that. In the yogi world, we talk about non-judgment.
Mhm.
So, and then it's also it's not just a yogi thing. I mean, that's becoming like a little bit of a buzz concept these days too, is like stop judging yourself.
Right.
Stop judging yourself. Stop associating with whatever that feeling is at that moment, that frustration that comes in because the thought is coming in, and it's like, why can't I do this? Like that frustration. So then you associate yourself with that negative feeling and kind of embody it and allow it to throw you off completely, instead of just acknowledging it and not judging yourself for having
Right.
it, not judging yourself. And so I'm shitty at meditating because a thought came into my head, like, as an example of judging yourself.
Right.
So the
Mhm.
practice is literally becoming self-aware in that moment. So like, and that's the last thing I'll say is like um your day where you noticed all of these benefits right away, and then the day that you didn't, you were feeling more anxiety, you were maybe it seems like you were trying to say that you were feeling like disconnected, and
Right.
probably less present. I mean, just literally the way that you explained your day, I was like, that's like multitasking disaster that like
Mhm.
I know so well, right?
Yeah.
Like I know those days so well where you're like, I have a list this high and I'm fucking superwoman, so I'm going to do it all.
Mhm.
But you're in like 14 things at once and you're
Yep.
not
Too many
really
browsers are open.
right. Too many browsers are open 100%. So, and not that you're not going to have days like that, not
Right.
that meditation um is the cure for that,
Right.
but it will allow you to be just a little bit more present and focused and in whatever it is that you are doing. Once you make it a practice and once it starts to do its thing, there are people who, like you, like I've heard, have almost immediate, I don't want to say results, but like almost an immediate note, they notice something, a shift immediately. And then there are people who are like, oh no, I had to meditate regularly for 3, 4, 5 months before I started to notice before anything happened,
Right.
before I noticed
You
any
know,
kind of benefit.
and you know what some of it is too, though. There's a couple of things that you touched on when you're like, I don't know if buy into the whole forgiveness or forgiving myself or letting myself like. I'm going to forgive myself for doing this. I don't know if I buy into that yet as much as I would be like, you know what? It's okay.
Right.
None of us, not one of us has done anything. We can't do anything. We can't do anything at all if we didn't learn it at some point, if we didn't practice at some point. We had to practice to walk. We had to practice to crawl. We had to practice eating off of a spoon. I mean, other than milk from your mother,
Mm-hmm.
you had to, and you even had to practice that a little
Yeah.
bit until you
Yeah.
got it right.
Right.
So everything we have to do is practice. And I also think
I love
that
it.
a lot of the forgiveness concept and a lot of the um kind of being easier on yourself, I think a lot of it has to do with the pandemic. And look, a lot of things happened. Like, it's so much easier. I read this, that psychologically it's easier to go into quarantine than it is to come out of quarantine.
That
So
makes sense.
we're sitting here and we were doing everything we could do, no matter what, blowing candles on a birthday cake. Could you even believe we used to do that? Like, there are things like that.
That we're
Like, now,
never gonna do again.
ever. Like, ew, that's gross. I can't believe we ever did that.
Yeah.
Like, but like we were, everything got shut down, and now we're here. And now we're here and we're all together, and there's nothing we can do but look on the TV or watch the phone, and we're getting fed all this information. And then all of a sudden, if you noticed, and if you think back and you look at what some articles and what people are putting out, and they're like, it's okay.
Mm.
Like, we kind of had to be nicer to ourselves and nicer to each other. I mean, not all of the time,
Yeah.
but but I do think that we were kinder at one point. Forget about what just happened. Forget about certain other big things that
Right. Forget
happened. But
about very current
think about
events.
think about think about how much kinder people were being. Like, my whole town did a birthday train for anybody that signed up.
Yeah.
That didn't get, any little kid that didn't get to have a birthday, we all, even if we didn't know them, the
Drove by,
fire
right?
department was driving past and doing that.
Yeah.
Who could do that? We were, I run our parent page. I'm an admin on our parent page for the town. I'm one of them. And what we did is we did a hometown Friday. And every Friday, anybody who had a business or an at-home business, anything, could post whatever they want so that we could support each other,
Mm-hmm.
rather than letting people going at each other that might have competitive businesses. We were supporting each other.
Right.
Um, we were trying to figure out ways on how to help the food pantry actually have food in town,
Yeah.
for folks that need it. So, I mean, we were kinder for a while there.
Yeah.
And then
For a
as we're
while.
getting,
I know.
yeah, and then as we're getting let back out, it's starting to, I don't think we've completely changed, but I also, like, you're not going to all be nice and lovey-dovey all the time.
No.
But I do think that people are a little bit more aware of their neighbor. And coming out of quarantine is going to be really very hard because
Right.
you're almost afraid to be with that neighbor,
Right.
to an extent.
Yeah.
But I think
There's an element.
meditating helps with that.
Oh,
You're in your own
100%.
self, like you're in your own thought, and you're in, not even, it's like you're in your own space, just to, like, just be.
Yeah.
We never got to just be, ever.
There's a reason that we are called human beings and not
Mhm,
human doings. Like,
mhm,
we are supposed to be able to pause. This society that we live in, unfortunately, does not
right.
reward any kind of stillness or pause. It only
Mhm.
rewards productivity and deliver,
Yep.
and that's it. So, we can talk about those concepts and bring them to light all that we want, all that we can. But for our own individual healing and spiritual health, we absolutely need to incorporate some kind of a self awareness and like a self alignment practice.
Mhm,
And meditation is obviously part of that. Um, you know, and I talk about that all the time too, where it's like, when do you get to just, and you can just, especially for moms, right? Like, I promote alone time all the time. It's
mhm,
like, but certain people don't like to be alone. But it's like, when it's not really for every single person, it doesn't necessarily about be like literally being alone by yourself. It's
Mhm.
more about that ability to reconnect with like your true self, like
Mhm.
separate from all of the external. And as
Right.
much as your children are, you know, as close to you as possible, right? Like we're
Right.
to the point where they sometimes don't seem like an external factor. You know, they're
Mhm.
like they came from you. Like it's
Right.
hard to wrap your head around that sometimes. Um but and we were actually just talking about this kind of before we hopped on. It's like they are a separate entity from you, and it's
Mhm.
not necessarily that you're prioritizing yourself over them. It's just that you also need the same
Right.
amount of care because you're just as important an individual and you have just as many needs. They didn't go
Right.
away. So you um so yeah, I digressed a little, but yeah, that opportunity to like get well with you gives you an opportunity to develop a little bit more connection with self, a little bit more like self-trust, and like that
Mhm.
intuition gives you um a sense of stability and
Right.
security that, like you said, when we venture out into the world again, that's that sense of security and stability that we're going to need to feel within ourselves. Otherwise, we
Mhm.
are going to have anxiety and fears surrounding moving back into, you know,
Whatever
yet
normal is gonna
another
be.
way of yet
Mhm.
another, you know, way of life.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so it's crazy because it's because right now we're in, you know, and you mentioned a little bit about this too. Um there are some people who have had a bit of a spiritual awakening during this
Mhm.
process, and I think, you know, I know that that's a very big like a very big phrase, and some people don't like to like say like, oh, I had a spiritual awakening, right?
Mhm.
um I'll go on record that I've had several spiritual awakenings
Mhm.
since March.
Mhm.
And I don't, you know, like as much as it seems like this big concept, it could be about anything. And you sometimes need to go in. So we talk about that too with meditation. It's like you're trying, and even with yoga itself too, it's like instead of tuning out, which is what most of us try to do when the shit hits the fan, we try to
Mhm.
tune out by having some alcohol or drugs, or we binge Netflix or whatever, which, you know, in
Ye
moderation, some of those
Mhm.
things can actually be forms of self-care. So it's very
Mhm.
borderline, right? But we tend to binge in general. We tend to find band-aids to tune out at all those external factors that are triggering us instead of tuning in. So we like it's just a good way to kind of look at it sometimes. It's
Right.
like, okay, but like what about going inside? People get fearful of that too, that concept and that spiritual awakening. That's why it triggers some people because when you go inside, you know, things might come up that you don't want to deal with.
Right. Mhm. Right, yeah, absolutely. But you know
It's
what, one of the things that I noticed too is s when I looked for it, kind of when I said I'm gonna be open to an idea. Well, I always say that I'm open-minded, but I don't know actually how open-minded I am. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know what
I'm
you
open mi
mean.
I'm out of the box thinker and blah, 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 all the buzzwords. That's me, right? And then I'm like, "Well, how open am I really am I truly am to myself?" So I read a book and long time ago, and I'll never forget this. Girl, Wash Your Face,
Mm,
and love her. And I read that book, and I think there was a question in there that said, "Well, what did you want to be when you grow up?" I don't know.
yeah.
Like, and then like that bothers me that I don't know what I
Yeah.
want to be when I grow up,
Right.
or what that has evolved to. I mean, I have no idea. I know that what I'm doing is not my purpose. I know that it's my
Mhm.
job. I know that being a mom is my purpose, but beyond that, but you see, being a mom, I just sent my identity over there. So what's
Right.
actually my identity? And I was
Based
kind of
on
hoping that looking inward, And the more that I start liking this, and I'm like, hmm, am I finding, am I beginning to find what I actually should be doing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I
So
that is so massive. Like,
it's
wow.
weird for me. And it's weird because I'm like, and I'm like, oh, I always know I wanted to, I liked, like, I love to work out, whether it's not to lose weight or whatever, it's just to feel better. I love lifting weights. I think that makes me feel powerful. And, but there are times that like, that I should slow down. And like right now, I feel like I need to slow down and just kind of recoup. And meditation is helping me with that because I don't slow down like ever
Mhm.
other than to go to sleep or to binge watch Netflix.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying?
exactly.
So it's
Which is
helping
has
me.
its place. Yeah.
Right. And I honestly do think that like I'm enjoying it and I'm like eating this stuff up like crazy. Like I'm just like, oh, what's this? Well, let me read that. That I'm almost like I'm all over the place. And it'll
Mhm.
eventually get myself where I need to be. But I'm just like, I wonder if this is the way that I'm supposed, like it feels good. So I wonder if
Yes.
this is it.
Well,
So
that's the thing, like, we are supposed to it is supposed to feel good. Like,
right.
like, that whole thing of, like, you said, "Okay, well, I put all, like, my effort into, um, what I was supposed to do," I was supposed to have a successful career, and I was supposed to have kids and be a really good mom,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so we did all that, and not that parts of that weren't pleasurable,
Right.
but pleasure, I mean, we're supposed to be living, we're supposed to be enjoying ourselves, we're supposed to be enjoying pleasurable
Hmm.
moments for
Right.
ourselves that are pertaining, you know what I mean? And that what better way than to tune in, than
Right.
to connect is like you honor yourself. When you
Hmm.
give yourself this time in these moments and you follow the nudges
Hmm.
of like, well, yeah, like everybody, for me, it, um, for example, it's like I've been going down, same thing. Like I've been going down a little rabbit hole here and there with a lot of spiritual concepts lately, and a
Hmm.
lot of, um, and connecting with a lot of people who are in intuitive wellness and in even channeling,
Hmm.
whether it's spirit guides, archangels, things like this. And there's a little voice in the back of my head based on probably some voices of authority that gave me some belief system about that all being a crock of shit and woo woo, right?
Hmm.
And not fact based and whatever. Then maybe just like, a genuine part of me that likes things that are exactly that, like fact based, like science based, like
Hmm.
proven, like, type of stuff. Um but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm still going down this whole full-fledged, by the way, because I just joined a spiritual circle that's going to be happening every Sunday. Like I'm in because
Hmm.
it feels good.
Hmm.
And because that what I've decided to do is to follow that, like I've always been curious. I've always been a
Hmm.
curious person. That's part of why I'm doing this show, is
Hmm.
because, like, me, like I like to talk and I like to have these conversations and I like to get into it because I'm curious. So that's what
Hmm.
I'm honoring when I
Right.
do that. Not that I'm trying to somehow fix whatever belief system was perhaps
Right.
not installed correctly or whatever. I'm honoring that curiosity. So that's the type, so you're doing the same thing. You've got this nudge that you are leaning into,
Hmm.
and you're absolutely right. Like I think it's massive that you would even notice this early on in your process, that you've got this, potential uncovering,
Hmm.
potential unveiling to occur. But it's a good segue to talk about patience too, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Ugh.
we even talked about that so much in our wine business,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
planting seeds and then
Plant seeds.
being patient. I mean, I learned so much from it. Like
Hmm.
it's true, planting little seeds and then just waiting until the time is right, and then, or like you said, like you meet someone or you read something and something, you make a connection,
Right.
it will happen. The answers
Hmm.
will present themselves, I always say. But it's just like, yeah, first we have to start following those little nudges. We have to. That's intuition. That's what it
Right.
is.
Hmm.
Crazy.
I
I'm
know, it's
so
insane.
excited for you.
I know.
Um, so yeah, I am going to close our little session tonight.
Mhm.
Would you mind if I offered you like a little guided meditation since it is
Sure.
almost bedtime?
Absolutely.
So I know that you're not as like you mentioned, like you're not as familiar with like breath work, breast, breath work, but you are. I am going to ask you to breathe, but not in any complicated,
No, that's
intricate
fine.
type of way. So obviously you're seated. All it doesn't matter where you are, if you're in a chair, you're on the floor, whatever it is. I'm sitting on a very specific meditation pillow right now, but you don't need it. It's not required.
Mhm.
All that I want you to do real quick is draw your attention to your bottom, like your foundation in the chair, your seat, and just
Mhm.
see if you need to make any adjustments to allow it to fully settle down into where you are. Just find like a comfortable position for your posture. So if that means leaning back into the chair or if it means, lengthening the spine a little bit, just find it where there's a minimal tension. See if you can relax that seat down. You relax your feet into the earth. So if your feet are touching the ground, see if the full sole of the foot can start to root down and connect with the earth beneath you. Let the shoulders roll down and away from your ears. So just find all this softness all the way from the shoulder down through the arm, all the way down through the forearm into the wrist, into the fingertips, and then the palms can melt down either in your lap or onto your legs or wherever they feel like they want to be. And then whenever you're ready, just like draw your attention to your breath. When you're ready for an inhale, take an inhale through the nose. I just want you to notice, your capacity of breath tonight. Become aware of what it feels like without judgment. And then let it go through the nose. Let the belly move in maybe just a little bit just to make sure that any excess air leaves the body. And then take another inhale. And this time, maybe your posture lengthens just a little bit as some energy draws up inside of you. Hold your inhale at the top for like a millisecond and then let it go. And at the bottom of your exhale, find a little bit more of a release into your seat. So with your exhale, you can always find more relaxation, more release. Take another inhale through your nose. See if you can expand your inhale just a little bit more here. Draw in a little bit more. And then we exhale again and find that relaxation. Let all the excess CO2 leave your body and make room for a really soft, natural breath and just allow yourself to be breathed here. And one last piece of this meditation is just to allow your body to relax. So, a body scan is something that you can use to take inventory of what's going on physically anytime, any place. You start at the tip top of your head and just imagine sort of like a warm light above the crown of your head. And so this warmth is just kind of drizzling down over you. And as it touches each part of your body, you can allow the muscles to stop working in that part of your body. We don't need to be using so many of our so much of our body. So we can relax starting at the top. We relax our face. See if you can relax your jaw a little bit. Let the tongue move itself away from the roof of your mouth. Even the eyes behind your eyelids, like see if they can soften. Your gaze becomes soft behind your eyelids. And then once again, the shoulders relax down and away from the ears. And you just really gently allow your belly to rise and fall with air with a really natural breath. Find some softness in your midsection. And as the last part of your scan of an inventory of your physical, just see if there's any spot of tension that you can pinpoint. Take an inhale, send your breath, send some love to that area. So you're kind of like sending your life force energy to that particular area, sending some love in that direction, and then let it go and see if we can make some space. So we can bring our hands to a prayer. Why not? and bring your prayer up to your heart space if it feels right for you. You're going to give yourself a little bit of love here by bringing your hands up to that space. Let your breath be soft, but become aware of it. And namaste. You can gently open your eyes. And again, it's like there's a lot of different ways that you can, find to meditate or to have like, a lot of it is just taking inventory, like I was saying, like, okay. And that is nowhere near turning your brain off. That is
No.
actually pretty actively, and so that's a more of a mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
So we don't worry about the thoughts. Let them come in. You might get some of your most amazing ideas one day when you're meditating, maybe your purpose.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
your purpose outside of mom life, right? Even though you're a fantastic mom, and I know that, and I look up to you in that realm. So
Yeah, it's a great, they're awesome. I like it.
I think I'm into it. All right. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Oh,
This has
thank
been
you.
amazing. And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for watching. Definitely subscribe to the channel for more videos on yoga, meditation, all things self-care for true self-alignment, mind, body, soul. Say it with me. Self-care is my job.